Alright guys, Hatchcrack again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. After getting absolutely waxed in the OpTic Legacy match last night, Dashy's given his perspective on what he thinks is a rather unfair matchup between OpTic Texas and the OpTic Dynasty back on Black Ops 2. Texas fighting for their life to try and figure out the spawns, the Dynasty fighting for who was the best player in the entire game. But I want to throw to your thoughts in the comments below, especially if they run this back again, what game they should play, especially on Dashy's new perspective today. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always, I greatly appreciate it. This is pretty funny. Kremp noticing that people noticed that he was preparing to run the shotgun in the match, but of course that was not required. Covered a quick rostermania things here. Firstly on Afro, this is going to be his team for the start of the new season. Rafi, F. and Eric Boom, and of course myself. So I'm looking for an organisation. Look, we'll see. Unfortunately in challenges nowadays, there aren't that many organisations still going about, certainly in the European side of things. I mean, look, there's some organisations going around. It's just very challenging to really make it work. If you're an org supporting challenges, your only real path to profitability is to sell these guys to the Pro League at some point, and a lot of the Pro League teams don't want to pay any buyouts, so it just becomes very complicated indeed. But for these type of guys, Eric Boom, of course, had his brief chance last season on Miami. He was okay, but frankly not good enough. And then Afro had an interesting year last year and has had a strange few years in the CDL, really. I mean, when he first came into the league back in Cold War, the guy was unbelievable on that Ravens team at the end of the season, right? Had such a great tenure. The next year in Vanguard started off really strong, looked like another incredibly promising SMG coming out of the UK scene, and to be honest was compared for a bit, of course, to Dylan Codd, who famously had that incredible Black Ops 4 season at the end of it, especially on Reciprocity. Then the following year things started to go downhill, and I was hoping that it wouldn't happen to Afro, and look, what's happened to Dylan Codd is not the same as what's happened to Afro per our understanding on everything in that story, but it is just unfortunate because I think Afro was a great talent and still is, but for whatever reason things went downhill for him, and obviously he was still getting a couple of opportunities. This most recent year he started out the season on the Los Angeles Thieves, and he was good in search, but his respawn wasn't really there, his pace wasn't really there as it was before, and the team just didn't really deliver right. So this is what Afro said after he was let go by Los Angeles Thieves, and you know, they let go of him on the 6th of August, right before they even went to the World Cup. JoeDeceives was out of the team for Afro earlier in the year. They then reversed that decision. Afro went out. JoeDeceives came back in. Joe improved a fair bit, and of course seemed to be a pretty mainstay player of their roster until everything has happened. So, you know, the reality is that even though Afro was let go, JoeDeceives, Kremp and others were let go as well, just because they were able to form the super team. So that was pretty much happening regardless. But as he kind of said at the time when he was let go, nothing but COD on my mind, he says. So there's been some speculation that maybe outer game stuff has kind of been affecting Afro's play over the last couple of years. But I still think a player with some potential, we'll see, right? It's difficult for guys like Afro, right? Because, you know, when you go down to challenges, especially European challenges, it is just difficult to get back in. Even a player like Donny Temp, for example, right, who, you know, was in the Pro League as a mainstay for many years, great player, you know, event winner, at least back in Subliners, back in MW19 online, but, you know, it is what it is, nonetheless, still got over the line in that one. Went down to challenges despite being still potentially a top player in the league, and has just really struggled to get back in. The advantage Afro does have is that he's an SMG player and his search and destroy is very good. So if he does well in challenges at the start of the season, I still think there's a realistic opportunity that he gets back into the league. And there are a fair few European players around the league as well that might say, you know what, Afro could be the guy if we need to improve in this aspect or that aspect, but it is just a difficult thing to see where it's going to go for now. But let's talk about the legacy match, because obviously there was some drama about this. The OpTic Dynasty boys demolished OpTic Texas in the series, and there's been lots of reactions saying, oh, well, here we go. Hex has to blow it up. I think it's time to take some chances on some challenger players. Like, if they can't beat these washed up old heads, then there's no chance they're going to be able to replicate their success at the World Championship last year. And as JakeHaLy, of course, says, don't want to be dramatic, but surely OpTic are at least considering just replacing the current roster and bringing back the Dynasty. Look, it's a question. If you formed a roster of these four guys on today's Call of Duties, how well would they do? Like, how good would this team be? If they were in their absolute primes, or at least if they were trying their absolute hardest and were 100% committed, then I think, you know, they'd be right up there at the top. if you actually put these boys back in, like, you know, it's unlikely they'd be able to replicate the success they've had previously, but the talent is obviously still there, and it was entertaining to watch. As Kremp says, legacy match was sick, of course, especially sick that he won. I love some of these shots as well, by the way. Pay to the order of the OpTic Dynasty, $10,000, and, you know, just great stuff. Good to see the boys happy as well. Like, I love this type of stuff, right? Looking back at COD history, and, well, it's obviously still going on in the present day. Kremp back in an OpTic jersey as well. Actually, I kind of forgot about that, right? It was speculated that Kremp was maybe going to be announced as part of OpTic again or something when he played the legacy match, of course, because Porsche seems to leak it a couple of weeks ago that he was going back to OpTic. That was, well, maybe it's not happening, maybe it's not been confirmed yet, I don't know, but it's kind of cool, isn't it, seeing Kremp back in an OpTic jersey. Of course, everyone there in attendance was an OpTic member, right? I mean, they had all the content creators there doing the signings, they had all the players there doing the signings that are all part of OpTic, and so Kremp was there doing the signings, right? But he's not part of OpTic technically, and I love that one of the screenshots that he tweeted out was this one, of course, that 250-12 that we saw yesterday. So obviously the OpTic boys, you know, the Texas boys, at least got absolutely cooked here. Shotzzy weren't so happy about it, Kenny wasn't so happy about it, but as Kenny pointed out as well, right, a couple of cool shots when they did the kind of signings as well. Dashy looks happy in this picture, and this is actually before they played the game, right? It almost looks like what he might be looking like after the series, based on what we're going to see here in a second. But yeah, do you guys think that Kremp's going to come back to OpTic? What's the likelihood there? He's, of course, still focused on racing, and that's his future for sure. He'll still be involved here and there in the competitive Call of Duty scene, which is nice. I mean, that's how it's been for Kremp. I think definitely for Kremp, right, he got a bit jaded with the scene, especially after he left OpTic. I think what happened with Kremp really is that, like, he was doing well on YouTube and everything, even back in the Complexity days. His stream was doing well, his YouTube was doing well when he was on OpTic, and then when he left OpTic, goes to Dallas, things, you know, he didn't get the same support from the people he thought were his fans, but were really just OpTic fans that were supporting Kremp. And then, you know, Kremp was probably kind of frustrated about that. And then, of course, the rest since then is kind of history. There's been the drama, certainly at the start of that MW19 season, Kremp6 versus Scump. It all kicked off for a couple of years. And now it's nice to see that everyone's kind of back on pretty good terms. But nonetheless, will Kremp be a part of OpTic again? I don't think that Hex is going to say no, but it also doesn't make sense for Kremp if he's not really doing that much Call of Duty or gaming-related stuff. And he's mainly racing cars in real life for the Rafa Racing Club or whatever he's going to do next year. It is a question where Kremp's going to go. Of course, OpTic is still on occasion supporting NASCAR and like one of the drivers over in that series, so maybe there's still something in that. But of course, Kremp was part of FaZe. Now that's no longer the case. If there's any Yorkies closest to it's OpTic, but of course nothing like that has been made official quite as of yet. But with Kremp dominating the series, I mean, Kremp had like a 1.85 over the series, Scump had a 1.89, like it was crushing, and Dashy of course was struggling fairly hard. So of course after that was over, he fires up the stream, plays some Black Ops 3 chals, a game that if they'd have played, it possibly, well, I think it would have been a very different story. If it was Black Ops 3, I highly doubt it would have been a one-way, you know, traffic, basically, right? A complete demolition job like it was. But, especially because Dashy's been playing that game a lot recently, and it would, you know, be a challenge, I think, for OpTic Dynasty to replicate their success they had on that game that quickly. But, you know, whereas Black Ops 2... it did favour them pretty heavily, right? I think as we thought that it would. So, yeah, Dashy says we basically never had a chance. Like, and I think you could almost tell when they got 12-point clubbed. I mean, they knew they'd lost at that point, so it's like, okay, whatever, like, what are we doing here? And I think that's the one thing that, obviously, Hitch and everyone that put on that event did a great job, but I'm like, Hitch during that map was like, okay, I was hoping it was going to be more competitive than this, but it is what it is, and this is what Dashy has to say, like, we just never had a chance in that series. Those three guys were arguing who was the best in the game. We were arguing where these guys are going to spawn.
Happened out there. It's the first thing you guys ask. Saw it coming. As I'm not gonna lie, like we never had a chance. We never had a chance. I'm just not that tilted. Guys, we never had a chance. Three of them were arguing between the three who was the best player in the game. Me and fucking AG. Me, AG, and Ken and Ann are asking where the fuck they spawn and fucking on half the hills. We're asking what the fuck P2 is on half of these hills. And three of them are arguing who the fucking best was in the game. They're actually genuinely having a debate. Three of them are like, they actually have a good case for any of the three. Seth was unlookable today, chat. Actually unlookable.
So it does go to show that a bit of spawn knowledge, if you don't have it, is just devastating on a game like Black Ops 2. Like that Yemen 250-12. like, if in modern games, you could probably not know the spawns and then still get a lucky spawn or a squad spawn or something that's going to help you at least get, 50 points, 60 points, 80 points, whatever. But if you don't know the spawns in Black Ops 2 and you're getting trapped and they know where you're coming from, you are getting cooked. And, that's what happens as we saw yesterday. But, look, is Dashy right as well on the players in that game? I just found this from 8 years ago now. So we're talking like 2016, looking back on Black Ops 2 to say, okay, who are the better players? And this job was quite interesting here. But, I mean, this is, I wouldn't say like the general theory, but this is about right. Now, Scump gets maybe, it depends. At the time, Scump was considered to be top 8, top 10, something in that ballpark. Some wouldn't put him there, some would. I think mainly because his team that season in OpTic was just very out of control, really. I mean, Scump back in Black Ops 1, before he was even 18, was incredibly solid. And then a couple of years later in Black Ops 2, he was obviously a really, really good player. But because OpTic at that year were a bit all over the place with their rosters and everything, and obviously Scump was still good individually, but Scump was kind of in that, top 8, top 10, top 5 maybe type conversation, rather than being absolute best of the best. And it makes sense given their results, to be fair, that year. But of course, in hindsight, some people have Scump a bit higher, and look, you put him back on that game today, obviously he's going to cook. But pretty much the consensus was that the best players in the game were Karma and then Kremp, pretty much. And then Scump was there or thereabouts. In and around the number of the world champions, right? So Killer, obviously Parasite, they have to be in and around that conversation as well. So yeah, I thought it was an interesting thread of debate. Even Sharp gets in at number 10, which I thought was kind of a nice shout as well. But I mean, I'd probably have Scump, but it is somewhere over Sharp, to be honest. But it is what it is. And Karma, Kremp, Scump were back then in the conversation at times for one of the best players in the entire game. Karma and Kremp most certainly were arguably top 1, top 2, and Karma was almost unanimously considered the best player in the world back in Black Ops 2 because he was an absolute prime slayer. And then yesterday in the Legacy game, he didn't even need to slay. He just does the objective work, and of course it's going to work out rather well. So yeah, pretty funny I thought from Dashy. Do wonder what you guys thought. Of course, you gave your perspective as well. What game would Pred, Shotzzy, these guys actually be in position to, capitalize on well? Maybe Black Ops 4 is the way to go next. I think that if I was to choose the game for the next one, you probably know what I would choose. But, this game clearly favoured the Dynasty. So I think next time you have to choose a game that is, if anything, is going to maybe favour the newer guys. Maybe that's the way to go. You could choose Cold War or maybe Black Ops 4. Because in Black Ops 4, the Dynasty wasn't there. Yes, all the players were still competing on the Dynasty, as were most of the guys on the Texas team, at least played it. Obviously, Kenny was nearly a world champion on that game. Dashy was incredibly good at Black Ops 4. Pred at that point wasn't in the scene yet, and Shotzzy was playing the game, but it wasn't until the next year that he got a CDL spot. But Shotzzy was playing a lot of Chals on that game and getting noticed. So BO4, I think, is the thing to play next. And I'm hoping they are going to be able to run one of those next season, or maybe even mid-season, because if you look at the way the Canada goes this year, well, frankly, we don't know the answer to what the Canada is going to look like this year. But there's going to be some sort of events happening this season, you would well imagine. Hopefully the season starts as soon after the game launch as possible, end of November. More than likely it'll be start of December, maybe for some qualifiers like we have seen before. Then there'll be an event at some point. But, what if there's a mid-season break or something like that? What if there's no longer 5-6 weeks of qualifiers, then a major, right? Then there might be a little gap at some point where somebody, maybe OpTic, can decide, all right, you know what? Let's run another Legacy match. Let's run it back briefly and see how that turns out. But very much interested in your thoughts, as ever, and all of this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.